Sports Minutes with Raushan.
Money FM 89.3. It's time for Sports Minutes with me, Raushan. Now, we've all got opinions on how things should be done, especially when it comes to resurrecting Singapore football. But that privilege, power and responsibility is bestowed to a select few, amongst which is the role of the General Secretary of the Football Association of Singapore. In November 2024, Yazeen Buhari stepped aside after 7 years at the helm, passing the mantle over to a certain Chew Chun-Liang. But what exactly does this role entail, and how will Chun-Liang bring his experience with the Lion City Sailors and in public service to do things differently? Well, I'm delighted to welcome to the Sports Minute studio Chun-Liang himself to tell us more. Chun-Liang, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Very excited to have you. It's been quite a whirlwind 3 months since you took up the position in November as General Secretary of the Football Association of Singapore. How has it been so far?
It's been hectic and also exciting. Really very exciting because the past 3 months has been a kind of like baptism of fire. And it was a very good experience because I get to work with the men's team in the AFF Mitsubishi Electric Cup. I work with the women's team in Vientiane for the AFF tournament. And also with the boys when they were in Thailand for the training camp in November.
I follow you on social media, so I see you've been clocking up the air miles as well as following the various different teams. How much of the opening 3 months has been understanding the lay of the land?
Actually, to be honest, it is not something that I'm unfamiliar with, but that 3 months allowed me to understand deeper the situation and also the issue and where are the areas that I could button down, and also where are the areas that is the strength of FAS that I can continue to strengthen. I think that's essentially what I managed to gather in the 3 months.
I can't wait to talk about the issues that you're going to tackle, but from an outside perspective, right, the role you've taken on is a bit of a poisoned chalice. With Singapore football, you can never win, right? There's always going to be haters coming along. Why then did you decide to take on this role?
There's a saying, you talk about poison, right? Someone's meat is someone's poison, right? To me, I take it as a meat. I'm a positive person. I know that the role is not going to be easy, right? But football has always been part of me. And to be able to contribute and to make a difference in football is an opportunity that I do not want to miss. And I think my experience with Sailors has shown me that, there's a lot that we can do and things that we can do to really bring Singapore football to the next level.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. My grandmother's favorite saying was, one man's meat is another man's poison. Yes. So you're absolutely right. There was a selection process, and then you obviously emerged as the outstanding candidate. Apart from your time at Sailors, right, as well as public service, what do you think made you the outstanding choice?
I wouldn't say I'm outstanding. I think you probably should judge me maybe in 2 years' time, but I, as you rightfully pointed out, my experience in Sailor has helped me understand the ecosystem better, the people, the stakeholder in football, and also coupled with my positivity, my energy, as my love for the game. I believe I will be able to do and contribute to Singapore football. But whether I'm the ideal candidate or the outstanding candidate that you mentioned, let's talk about it in 2 years' time.
Fantastic. You not just exude positivity, humility as well is a big part of what you exude, and I respect that a lot. Let's talk about the Football Association of Singapore. You obviously have known the association as a fan, but also during your time as CEO of the Lion City Sailors. Now that you're 3 months into the job, has there been anything that surprised you while being part of the organization now, for good and for bad?
Football Association in Singapore is not an association or organization that I'm familiar with. But, having spent 3 months, I get to really understand the work and the people. And I can tell you the amount of work is tremendous and often not seen by people outside. I can easily share, like during the AFF, if you could follow, right? So we're playing our final group stage game on the 20th of December. I can still remember the dates.
In Malaysia. Right? Yep.
So we have the chance to qualify, but we can't wait. We couldn't wait because we have to actually prepare for semi-finals. So that we have to move the venue to jump aside. We need to start talking about ticketing. We need to start planning who will be our semi-final opponent. And the group A was like wide open. It could be Vietnam, it could be Indonesia, it could be Cambodia, it could be Philippines. So lots of planning that needs to go in. And even as we are playing the semi-final second leg game on the 29th, right? So our home game, should we proceed to final, will be on the 2nd of January. And we have to start planning and thinking about how to sell the ticket on a New Year's Eve, and even thinking about booking air tickets for our final game. It could be in Philippines, it could be in Thailand. So lots of work put in, but really not known to people outside.
Because you brought up the AFF Championship, right? I have a quick question on that in terms of the venue. There was a lot of chatter of why it's not a national stadium or why it's at Jalan Besar. I'm fully aware of why it was the situation, but there was a lot of public backlash. What did you learn from that public backlash?
Actually, I learned that we need to communicate this better to our fans. The fact that AFF tournament was postponed, right? And we all know that National Stadium, it is not just a venue for football and for many events, concerts, and things like that. And we try our best to plan to make sure that the availability of the National Stadium is there when AFF tournament takes place. But just unfortunate that the tournament got shifted by 2 to 3 weeks, and it actually clashes with a concert. And yeah, we try our best. I would love to play at the National Stadium. I have, instead of a Jalan Besar Stadium of like 5,000-6,000 fans, I love 50,000 fans. But that's something that we have to deal with it. And yeah, move on.
I'm of the opinion that the Jalan Besar Cauldron added to the atmosphere that night because it's one of the best Singapore football experiences I've had. Let's move it on to your role as GenSec, right? We touched on you being the CEO at the Lion City Sailors previously. Apart from the scale in terms of stakeholders and who you're responsible for, what are the key differences in that job as you found out?
As you rightly point out, the scale is the biggest difference, right? Because now looking at the national level, and in fact, I think it's in this role, there are a lot more stakeholders that I have to work with, from public to private organization within the region, right? Even internationally. So the past few months was pretty good for me because I get to work with many of our very important partners, the AFF. I get to, when I was in Malaysia, I get to visit AFC. Right, get to meet very important people and important partners that we will work very closely together, as well as FIFA. So kind of like that 3 months induction that allowed me to really open up and also interact with everyone. So that's the difference in terms of the stakeholder. And I think the other area is I feel the difference is that I think today there's still a bit of negativity in terms of Singapore football, whether it's at the club level, whether it's at the national level. And actually, our fans, they do show their emotion as well as their opinion and comments. But actually, that's a good thing. I tend to see it positively because at least they care. The fact that people care, I think that's the most important thing. And that this is where we can engage them and show them that there is future in Singapore football.
I can't wait to find out more about your plans to get the fans on side. You talk about that negativity surrounding Singapore football, right? I feel like with your role at the Sailors as CEO, it was fresh, it was new, everybody was excited. So you sort of won that battle already. With Singapore football, you're walking into so much baggage, if I can say, right? So in terms of transferable skill sets, what are they between a CEO and a GenSec?
I would say that both roles are similar and also quite different. If you look at Sailors, right, if you look at, it's like an empty house, you have to start renovating, you have to decide that maybe this is a place where you want to put your couch, this is a place where you put your fan, and you may put it in the wrong place, right? So that is the challenge and also the opportunity when you start afresh. But if you look at a house that's already fully furnished, actually what you need to do is to maybe replace furniture, maybe there's a need to tear down a wall and rebuild. So there's strength and weaknesses in terms of the two, right? So I think FAS, we already have a foundation. I think I want to highlight that Yazeen has put in place a very strong foundation. I think the foundation sets us to achieve bigger things, whereas in the Sailors, we have to start from scratch. So I would say that these are the differences that I see.
That's fascinating perspective, and my mother is renovating her house at the
yeah.
moment, so I can relate to all the experiences you're giving me. Now, speaking at the media briefing on Thursday, you spoke about the sentiments in the fraternity towards football in general in Singapore, right? Perhaps you can tell me some of your observations in terms of your role and what you've learned.
Actually, the past 3 months has been quite an eye-opener for me. If you look at the women's side, we have qualified for the AFF tournament in this year. The girls, they fought very hard. Despite the first game, I was there at the match, considered a last-minute goal. It kind of dented the confidence, but the girls really pulled up their socks and we qualified. So lots of positivity when I look at the women's. And when I look at the men's in AFF, we didn't have our full squad, right? We didn't have many of the players who were still playing in the Thai League. We didn't have Song. We didn't have many of the players. We have injured players. But we managed to come together as a team, right? On paper, we may not be the strongest team, but we show that we could deliver, right? So when you look at this, a few things stood out to me. The number one thing is belief. We need to have the belief. So the belief is core. Then the next thing is really the fighting spirit. And the third one is unity, right? So when you have that belief, you have this fighting spirit, the unity, you can achieve great things. I think that's something that we saw, and that's something that the fans saw. And I want to thank the fans for being behind Singapore all the way for the women as well as the men. But actually, when I look at within the fraternity, if you could remember, we invited Radi to one of the matches. And when I was at the dugout, when he came, and when I saw Haris, Safwan walking past him, giving him a hug, the two of them, they are our very senior player. But I believe it was Radi who gave them their first cap. So that if you see that moment is just amazing, right? So that's essentially sums up. But of course, not everything is rosy. We had our problem with ticket price. I don't want to deny that, right? And of course, we have the problem with not being able to play our semi-final game at the National Stadium. But I think these are things that I see the positive part and also the areas that we can do better.
No, I absolutely love that. There are no pain points without lessons, right? And it's important that you pick up on the lessons. You touched on Reddy there. I felt as part of the AFF, from a marketing perspective, the FAS went all out in this one and they used nostalgia to the benefit to bring fans together. Was that a Chun-Liang touch? Because fan engagement is something you championed while at Lion City Sailors.
I don't want to say it's a Chun-Liang touch. I think it's the football fraternity touch, right? Football is nothing without fans, so it's important. So we make use of the AFF games. We invited Radi back, and on the 17th of December, I still can remember
my birthday, by the way.
Your
Just
birthday
putting
also.
it out there. Yeah.
And so 30 years ago, we won the Malaysia Cup double, right? So we also used that opportunity to reinvigorate the support and the emotion as well as the spirit of Singapore football. Yeah, and fans, yes, the Singa Brigade, I'll make a point to join them on matches. Although, sometimes I have to host guests here and there, listen to them, what they want to do. In fact, next week, we are going to invite the fans from the SPL club as well as from Singa Brigade. We're going to continue to ask them, what can we do? How can we support you better? So that, they can bring more fans to rally behind our Lions.
That's music to my ears, and I'm sure it's music to the listeners' ears, because for long, this is my opinion, communication and perhaps to a certain extent accountability hasn't been best, but it seems like you're addressing that. You talk about, in terms of that fan engagement, right? You mentioned earlier the women's game and the men's game. This is my observation. When we talk about the women's game in Singapore and the men's game, there's support, but there's varying levels of support. For the listeners listening in, I'd like you to tell them why they should give as much support to the women as much as the men.
So the women's, they play an important role also to represent Singapore. In fact, when we look at the current squad and also the young girls, right, I see huge potential in us, and we believe that they will deliver a result in the years to come. And the women's football game is as exciting as the men game. We have exciting things that we have lined up for women's football, which it will be made known soon. And I think we will see, an increased activities in the women's football scene. Okay, with the Women's Premier League coming up. And actually, the women's national team will have a lot more tournament this year. I tell you, it's a lot more than the men's. Okay, and we are going to bring in more things to help raise the awareness of women's football and also more support for women.
You definitely have a career in broadcast because you know how to tease the listeners and keep a lookout for these announcements. Now let's talk about the men's game. You've been the CEO of Singapore's only privatized club, that's the Lion City Sailors. And a lot of chatter has been privatizing our league, privatizing the other clubs, and you can see what money does to the standards almost. Sailors are by far the gold standard in Singapore, right? What then are the pain points you've encountered that are preventing the other clubs from following that same route?
I wouldn't want to say it's money that you mentioned. I would say that it's resources in general. Yeah, I think with a constraint on limited resources, it's difficult for many of the other SPL clubs to deliver what you see with the Sailors. But I think what is important is that the club should not just stop. They should continue to think about how they can do better. Because what is important, I also learned over the years is that, yes, we want investors to come, right? And, sponsors to come. But I think before you can do that, you must be able to show value, right? If you are not able to show value, it's difficult for them to come. So there must be a concerted effort to deliver value. Value may not be in money. It could be in the way you engage the fans. It could be a way where you can, provide the value to the organization that are coming in. So we need people to think about it, So it is important to think about at a club level is beyond football. It has to be outside football, fan engagement, awareness of what the club is doing, CSR. These are many things that I feel that the club should do. But of course, resources is always an issue, yeah.
And when you talk about club level, I completely agree with you. In fact, I think some of the SPL clubs are already doing that within a smaller scale, right? But because you have experience, do you think you can lean in and advise them in terms of the opportunities that can be made possible?
I think as in FAS, we are running the league as well. So it is also our responsibility to help the clubs, right? So definitely, I think if there are opportunity that we see a partner that we think we can connect to the club for some reason, we will continue to do that. And what is important for FAS is to be able to bring in investor to SPL. I think if we are able to bring in stakeholder investor to SPL, then the value and also that opportunity will also be then cascaded to the SPL club.
I mean, fingers crossed that is the future because I think that's going to improve everyone together, right? Let's talk about Thursday's briefing. You touched on the need to build a sharper, more efficient organization. How exactly do you envision this roadmap?
So I won't be shy to say that, my 3 months, I get to work with different departments in the FA. So as a team, as a department, they know what to do. But I felt that today, they may be a bit silo. So I see a lot more opportunity for us to do things better, to be sharper, to be smarter, and to be more efficient if we are able to work closer together. Collaborate together, have better integration and coordination so that, actually we could do a lot more with what we have if we are sharper in this aspect. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm all for collaboration. That's something I try and address in my day job as well. So hopefully that comes true. Let's move it on to a slightly difficult question, but I think you're best placed to answer this. Perhaps your predecessor might have been better placed to answer this because he's a former referee.
Okay.
But for you as the GenSec of the FAS, does the refereeing decisions or scrutinizing of referees fall under your purview?
Referee is part of football, right?
Yes.
So definitely.
Okay, then my follow-up to that is, are you addressing the recent spate of incidents in terms of levels of refereeing and how it can be better? Even if there were no incidents, we all want standards to raise, right? So are you addressing that?
Definitely. Refereeing. Referee is a very important part of football. I think we all acknowledge that. But we know that, human, we are not perfect. So there are bound to be errors and mistakes. I know there have been issues with regards to the performance of referee, but that's something that we are looking at. It's not something that we are ignoring and staying silent. one of the things that we are looking at is really how can we help and equip the referees better. Really looking at the cameras, the VAR system. To be honest, we could do a lot more with our VAR system, and that could really help the referee in making a decision, including the quality of broadcast. If we have a higher definition, cameras, you can see everything better and sharper. So these are things that we really look at. But of course, with all of these things comes, increase in the cost of broadcast and also referee. But that's certainly important that when you do. That's number one. The second thing that we want to continuously do is to train our referees and to continue to develop them so that they can be better referees. Yeah, and something that we also talk about, something that we try to follow the English PG and
MOL.
Yeah, is that maybe we should form a community. Maybe we should even develop protocols where we look at the performance of the referees. And if, let's say, for some reason we felt that there's a gross error, then we could take corrective action and be very quick, in addressing it. And also thereafter disseminating this to the referee. I think that's something that FAS owe it to our referees, and we need to look after our referees.
No, I absolutely love the reference you're making to PGMOL, because straight away you think about accountability. Yes, it hurts a fan when their club is affected, but I think it's important that the referees address it at their level. And I think in two ways, some fans, me included, need education in terms of the rules as well. You're just quite knee-jerk in terms of your reaction, right? Follow up to that, how many of the club chairmen are always calling you to complain?
To be honest, I'm happy to receive their phone call, but they don't always call to complain. Sometimes they talk about things.
Okay.
Yeah, but I take their feedback and also their comments seriously. I think it's always good. In fact, anyone, anonymous feedback, because that will help improve FAS. So I take it very seriously, and referee decision is always very subjective. I always tell people, a football match is played by 22 players, and watched by 50,000 referees. So you have 50,000 opinion and things like that. So we really need to make sure that in terms of the standard, in terms of things that we do, right, it is above board and it is, justifiable in terms of the decision made. Again,
another exciting adventure I'm looking forward to FAS embarking on in 2025 to tighten up refereeing standards. Let's talk about your boss, I guess. Hierarchy-wise, he is your boss. That's the president of the Football Association of Singapore, Bernard Tan. He is a brigadier general. You were formerly a colonel in the army, lieutenant colonel, if I'm not wrong.
A colonel.
Yes. A full colonel, I beg your pardon. Yes. Does it help to be a military man speaking to a military man?
Not really. When we see each other, we don't exchange a salute. I don't get to do push-up if I make a mistake. But actually, I think we have already put our uniform behind us. I think that's important. I would say that, because we have been brought up for quite a number of years in the military. So when it comes to, when we look at structure and organization, so we were very clear, like when it comes to accountability, responsibility, when we talk about a chain of command, when we talk about who is in charge, who is supporting, who is supported. So we have the common language, so we are able to relate to things. But these are very important things when you talk about developing football, accountability, as you highlighted earlier. So otherwise, I don't think there's any difference.
So there's no company tiam in the office when
no
either of you... Okay. Some of the listeners might argue certain people need to do some push-ups, but that's a conversation for a different day. Look, Chun-Liang, you've been very candid and honest with your time, and I think the listeners will appreciate that. You've talked about improving the women's game in terms of what's coming up, improving refereeing standards, increasing fan engagement. Give us a teaser of what's in the roadmap for 2025, especially surrounding the men's game, because there's Asian Cup qualifiers coming up in March, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So Asian Cup qualifier in March, then of course the SEA Game in December. In between, there are also a tournament. But really, 2025, something that I want to put in place is really to build a sharper and a more efficient FAS, so that we can do a lot more with what we have today and also deliver a lot more. So that's number one. I would say number two would be continue to engage our fans. Right, it's not easy for FAS because you if you understand that it's not like a club. Many of our games are quite sporadic. So I think how do we continue to engage our fans, doing more content, keeping them updated on the national team side and things like that. So engaging your fans is important, and making sure that when they come for matches, it is more than just a 90-minute games. It is a whole suite of activity, that we can put together for them, right? So that's the second thing. I would think the third thing will be is how can we work with more stakeholders to bring in more investors to contribute to Singapore football so that, with more resources, as highlighted, we can raise the game, we can do a lot more for Singapore football and really bring our football to the next level. Yeah, and everything I mentioned got nothing to do with football. So the fourth thing is I would support our head coach, whether it's a woman's or the men's, in everything that they do because they will deliver the result, right? So they call the shot. Yeah. So they are responsible for the outcome on the pitch.
Wow, when you lay it out like that, I'm already tired listening. I can't imagine how you're going to juggle all of this, but all the best in the adventure. You talk about stakeholders. Hopefully this airing on Money FM will bring across some stakeholders to the FAS as well. We've been speaking to the General Secretary of the Football Association of Singapore, Chew Chun-Liang. Chun-Liang, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me here.
Sports Minutes on Money FM 89.3.